5:30, so we might get started now. If those who are able to stand, if you could stand for the acknowledgement of country and service announcements, thanks. The City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Ramangeri and the Narrabri people, traditional custodians of the land and our live and work. We acknowledge their deep connections to country and we pay our respects to elders present and emerging leaders. And this respect is extended to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander.
The City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. Respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, religions and beliefs, cultures and backgrounds.
We recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. We remember those who've lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change to the people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people whom it serves. Amen.
Please be seated. So welcome everybody, and those that have tuned in on our services via, I was going to say Skype, but it's not Skype. It's our live streaming. Welcome to you all, and I know that there's a number of ladies from Victor Harbor Probus that listen to us, and I said to you that I would say a special hello to you when I spoke to you this evening. So hello, and thank you very much to everyone in the gallery for coming as well. I really like to see it when we've got people who are interested in what we do here at the City of Victor Harbor and the decisions that your council makes on your behalf. We do have one apology tonight, and that is Councillor Schofield. We don't have any items that are adjourned or lying on the table, and so we will go straight to the minutes of the last meeting. And can somebody please move that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting on the 23rd of October be confirmed as true and accurate? Thank you, Councillor Mann. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you very much, Councillor Quinton. Mackenzie. Do either of you have any questions about that? Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Councillor Burns.
I was overseas, so I don't know if they are true or correct. So I'll probably vote no because I don't know if they are true or correct.
Thank you. And Councillor Karemba.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, in regards to a motion without notice that was, it says here that was carried unanimously regarding the behavioural management policy. I did vote for that, so that's incorrect. So the minutes aren't exactly right.
So what I can do is amend the recommendation that the minutes be confirmed as true and accurate with the amendment that item, and I'll find the item number.
19.2.
19.2, thank you, was not unanimous. Was carried, rather. You'd be happy with that, Councillor Karemba? Thank you. Are there any more questions or any further discussion in relation to those minutes? All those in favour of that recommendation with the addition? And those against? That's carried, thank you. We do have two deputations tonight, which is great. The first deputation is from Nicola Morris. Nicola, are you here? Yes, fantastic. And you're talking to us about the People's Health Alliance Fleurieu Hub. If you would like to go down to the microphone at the end. And perhaps Councillor Kemp might be able to just show you how to turn that on. And we may need another chair if there's three of you. And Nicola, you have 10 minutes, and that Yep, and that 10 minutes will include question time as well. So please go ahead.
Speaking. Oh, thank you. Great start. Thank you, Mayor and councillors, for having us. And you've all got a copy of our proposal, so thank you for your time for reading that. We are representing People's Health Alliance. We have a hub here for this area, and it is a people-led approach to shift the paradigm of health and wellbeing for treating for people to become more involved and empowered in their health and wellbeing, and to develop community connections. So I wasn't going to read all this thing. I gave it to you in a limited time. The thing that's not in here is about a bit more about our point of difference from what's already in the community. So it is about, and there are some great programs here. That's for sure. But it's about a broader view of health and wellness. As holistic health practitioners, we believe in complementary health approach and wellness approach. So with medical practitioners, dentists, chiropractors, masseurs, and there's more creative things, there's physical therapies, there's actually, and then about what people want, what their needs are, and the broader definition of health and wellbeing, encompassing things like finances, food banks, parenting support, and also empowering individuals of what they can contribute, because it is a place for health for all. I have a public health background, so health for all is very dear to my heart. And so being accessible and affordable and appropriate to people, and for them to, and for having a collaborative approach with, like mentoring and coaching, things like that. So that's all part of it, what people will bring to the centre as well. But from a broader view of health and wellness is a psychosocial model for promoting community connectedness, hope, safety, resilience. It will be to be consumer focused for what people need for their health and wellness goals in a holistic health framework. So I'm also happen to be a naturopath and herbalist, as is Kathy is, Ian is a psychologist, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so we've got a whole variety of, very professional, with professional people. We looked at the payment would be for, no one would be denied any service, and it's to provide a hub, a place where people can come and know that they can get some support for their health and to be supported in their what they want. So it is a very relevant model that people, know what they want and that they should be empowered in their choices. So yeah, what else did I have here? So it is, that wider view, a range of health driven by community and individual needs, and also working with other people in the community, other practitioners, other services that are already in the community as well. So a more coordinated, holistic approach centred on individual needs. And that we are under the umbrella of People's Health Alliance, which started in England and is an international organisation. And it's really grown, especially in in lots of places, England, South Africa, New Zealand, Spain, and here in Australia. We have the hub here is probably the strongest in South Australia, actually. We had an expo yesterday in McLaren Vale, which was really great, despite the weather, and competing with things like the cars in Adelaide and the Christmas pageant down in Glenelg. It was actually a very positive day of networking and people becoming a bit more aware of what services are in the community. Did I just say something?
Well, yeah, so basically the aim of the hub would be supporting physical and mental health. Now, I know there are, already quite a lot of mental health programs here, but I feel there is a need in the community to have this hub where everything is under an umbrella. I haven't been in this area long enough, but what I feel from my professional judgment is that it's very hard to find, support for people most what I've seen from the clients I have, they are not aware of what is available for them. So to have a hub, where they can come and where we can then connect with other community programs, or that would be, yeah, there is this gap here. So we also promote, like the aim is also healthy aging, and also education and nutrition. I feel when I work with clients in this area, and probably most areas to be honest, but nutrition is very low on the agenda, and we all know that nutrition is a big part of our mental health, and most of the time we just really not educated about it. So I think it would be very interesting to have, somebody who's very good in nutrition and can give education. The service we provide is for free. So basically, if I would be in that hub, I don't ask any money. It's a free service, so people can come in and pro bono, and they might, want to do a gold coin donation. But all the practitioners we have on board, and there's more, I think it's more than 20, are willing to give their services to this local community. They're all registered. They all have public and indemnity insurance. So it's not like, that we don't know what we're doing. We're all very professional people. We try to build social support for all the people in this area. Also parenting support. I have a few young women in my practice where they feel that there is no parenting support when they're struggling to bring up a baby who's crying the whole night, and there is no support where they can actually go to, where they say there is a nurse available and there may be a bed available so that they can have a good night's sleep, and that they, can be willing or can get into the next day, because, when we don't get enough sleep, then we don't really cope very well. Yeah. So any questions, or do you have anything to add?
Everything's been really well explained. I'm a naturopath and a herbalist, but also a former midwife. I have experience in both aspects of healthcare, so both in hospital systems as well as in private practice. And I probably agree very strongly with what Ina is saying about the support services that we need, the education that we need here, and we're providing it in a way that's quite holistic and inclusive, and also helping to create an awareness that there is more than one path to wellness, so people are able to explore the various different aspects of healing and health and wellness.
And there's 2 minutes left, I think.
Yeah, any questions?
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, you've got a question.
Thank you for your presentation. I think this is an excellent idea, and I like that overall umbrella concept of having many services in one situation. However, I'm curious about how the individual client is going to be managed. They may come in with feeling they have a need for one particular service. Will they have a case manager who will talk with them to identify other services that they may require or need?
Sorry. Yes, that's what we do. Like, for example, I can just speak from my own profession, mental health, for example. So there might be somebody coming in, and I will be then available, and I will take this client, basically like crisis counseling. And after the session, I would, if the client say, yeah, that is okay, to phone her or his GP and let them know that this patient or client, as you want to call them, came in today. And then GP should be calling his client and then let him come in and get a mental health care plan where this client has 10 sessions under the mental health care plan. So it's not that you know, they're just coming in and we let them just, you know, loose basically. No, there is a case manager, so there will be always somebody attendant.
Thank you. Councillor Mann?
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I guess council's responsibilities in a lot of areas is sort of always growing, but what you've seemed to describe as a regional Fleurieu-wide health clinic and hub, and the services seem to fit more within a state government purview of responsibility. So I was just wondering what approaches, if any, you've made to the state government.
We haven't done state government. No, we
Prefer to keep things local.
We
Yeah.
actually, just in a
Yeah, go.
nutshell, that for community-based, like sort of, so from the people, for the people, so like a non-profit, probably more that kind of
You have
model.
1 minute left, just in time
Appreciate
for
that.
one more question.
Yeah.
Councillor
Just
Burns.
quickly, thank you very much for your presentation. I just had probably a similar question to Councillor Mann. When you say local Fleurieu group, how many are actually in the City of Victor area? And when you say local practitioners, I'm assuming it's holistic practitioners, naturopaths, dietitians, acupuncturists, and not chiropractors, psychologists, trained doctors, or whilst you may work with the mainstream medical, are there any of the mainstream practitioners also working with your group as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. What I just already mentioned, you know, when they come in for mental health
Yep.
at that hub, I would refer them to the GP. There might even be GPs involved, holistic dentists. So yeah, no, we work with conventional medicine at, you know. that's
And
the-
also having a regular program, so like of people's interests. So there could be a dance group, there could be a child support group. that sort of thing.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Your time is up, and we do have a long meeting tonight. But look, that's very interesting, and I'm sure that the elected members will consider your request, and I'll certainly be in touch with you. Thank you. We do have another deputation, and this is from Jonathan Robran. Jonathan, you're here, I know, and Jonathan's going to be talking about Operation Flinders. And I know that our high school is involved in Operation Flinders, which is a fantastic not-for-profit that does wonderful things for our young people in need. So if you'd like to come up, Jonathan, and sorry, I did, and Judy as well. Nice to meet you, Judy. Do you know how to operate the microphone? Yep, great. Please go ahead. You've got 10 minutes, which should include question time as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the members and council for having me this evening. Yes, just like to formally introduce Judy Myers as well from Harcourts Real Estate, but Judy's also a volunteer with Operation Flinders and is very passionate about our program in supporting young people, particularly local youth here in Victor Harbor. So thank you, Judy, for coming along. If we could show the first video, that would be most appreciated. Thank you.
Sometimes it's difficult to see the way forward, to know which way to turn. But when you're given an opportunity to take a step in a new direction and explore new horizons, you take it. It's an opportunity to test your own limits, to face your fears, to go new places, meet new people, learn new skills, dream new dreams. And at the end of it all, we leave our old selves behind and step into a brighter future. We may not know exactly what's around the corner or down the track, but we'll get there, one step at a time.
Thank you. Operation Flinders, we've been running for 32 years. Our program was founded back in 1991 and over that time the program has grown considerably in terms of the number of young people that are participating and referred through various schools and agencies throughout South Australia, including teams from the Victor Harbor High School and also the Encounter School locally here. So the program is based and aimed at supporting young people between the ages of 14 and 18 years. And young people who have challenges in their lives for all sorts of reasons. It could be in their school environment, it could be at home, it could be in the community. The young people could be disengaged from school, might have experienced trauma, might have from a dysfunctional home environment, maybe lacking motivation, goals, maybe lacking direction. So there's a wide profile of young people who are referred through to our programs, and they're referred through their schools who participate. And the young people have the opportunity to go up to the Flinders Ranges as a team of 10 from their local school. In the example of Victor Harbor High School, have referred young people up to a team of 10, and those young people are up in the Flinders Ranges for an 8-day period. They undertake a number of daily cross-country hikes in the northern Flinders Ranges, which is pretty rough and rugged and challenging terrain. They experience an evening of Indigenous culture. They learn about abseiling, a high ropes course that we offer. Experience some team building and team challenges, learn to navigate, learn some first aid and bush survival skills. But those physical elements to the program are all designed and to engender personal qualities, personal values such as leadership, self-esteem, confidence, resilience, ambition, so that over the course of the 8-day exercise we see change from young people who initially very reluctant to get involved in the program, may find the difficulty walking, may be objective to some of the rules and some of the activities that we undertake with them, and certainly over the course of the 8 days the young people get used to the walking, the carrying their backpacks, the activities involved, and by the end of the program a lot of the young people have such a really positive experience. They've been led by consistent role models, people who are supportive. We're not a boot camp. I've really got to stress that. It's not about yelling and screaming at the kids and marching them through the countryside. We're a very supportive program. It's evidence-based. We have clinical research and support that underpins the therapeutic value of our program, if you like. So over the course of the 8 days, we can see considerable change in the young people to young people who initially were reluctant to, at the end of the program, young people are really thriving in the environment. We average around 400 young people per year. This year we had just over 404 it was. Even during the COVID years, we had 300 to 350 young people participating, and they're referred from schools literally all around the state, as I mentioned, but certainly here in Victor Harbor as well. And since 1991, over 9,500 young people have participated in the program. So it's grown significantly from very humble beginnings, with about 30 to 40 young people participating, to around 400 young people participating each year on the program. The age range is 14 to 18 years, and male and female are both referred. It's about 60% male, 40% female. Young people of an Indigenous background are around 15% of the referrals, and the young people are referred through their schools and their agencies. We don't actually get involved in the selection process ourselves. That's the schools who nominate to join our program, and they're the ones who refer the young people. And it's about a 50-50 split between country, regional and metro schools. So schools from as far as Roxby Downs and Ceduna and the Riverland, down here, down south in the Fleurieu, we've had Yankalilla. Schools from literally from all around the state have been referring young people through our program for many, many years. Behavioural patterns I've touched on over the course of the 8 days, the storming, norming, performing, team building, team element phase. We see that often for the young people, and initially it can be a challenge, and as I said, by the time they're working through the 8-day program, we see the young people thriving by the time they complete the 8-day program. I might ask if we can show the next step video, please. That would be fantastic. So it's important that Operation Flinders, we provide further opportunities after the program.
After my time at Yankalilla Station, I was ready to continue my journey and take the next step. To continue to build my confidence and try new things. The next step towards thinking big, reaching new heights, and being a part of something new. to be braver, more daring, and more active. The next step towards new experiences, with new ideas, new places, and new friends. Challenging myself like this has opened my eyes to so many new opportunities. The next step can be whatever you want it to be. You just need to take it.
The Next Step program offers a range of recreational, educational, personal development, leadership and employment possibilities for the young people as well. So it's really important to build on the skills that they've learned. So been on our 8-day program. We rely very heavily on volunteers. Judy, as I mentioned, is one of our fantastic volunteers, but also a very dedicated fundraiser here locally through the Harcourt South Coast team, who have been holding fundraising events for several years now. And Judy, if you'd like to share with the members your involvement and why you're so committed to Options.
My background is teaching many years ago, and also international development in about 35 different countries around the world, and a lot of it was with youth programs. And so I see this as an amazing program for young people. I've been involved in the Next Step program, so what you just saw there, and some of the stories that the young people tell you, you just can't believe it. It's just amazing that they've been resilient enough to survive. And then, they say things to you like, "This is the first time I've been able to trust adults, on this program." So, sorry, it's pretty emotional. So I really believe in the program, and the students that we sent last year that we fundraised for, that went off to Operation Flinders from the Victor Harbor High School, there were 10 of them, and 4 of them have just finished Year 12, their SACE, which it wasn't expected to happen before they went off to Operation Flinders. Another 2 of them have got full-time employment and apprenticeships, and the other 4 have actually got part-time employment. So it's been highly successful. We've raised since I've been involved in it here, we've raised almost $40,000 from the community helping us and being backed by Harcourt South Coast.
That's fantastic. We've probably got time for one question only. Can Stuart, you asked a question. I'll just see if anyone's got a question that didn't ask previously. If not, Stuart.
Thank you very much for the presentation. How do you differentiate from outward bound programs and similar, and not undermining what you do, which is fantastic? And it also wasn't clear what you were expecting of council. I mean, great presentation, but I was a little lost there.
Outward bound, my understanding. Sorry, Judy.
No, you go.
Yeah. Do you know much? Okay. My understanding of Outward Bound, not being intimately familiar with the program itself, but that's very much a fee-for-service based model where families can pay for their young person to participate in various programs and activities. At Operation Flinders, for the young people and their families, they may struggle to be able to afford an 8-day excursion in the Flinders Ranges. So we're a not-for-profit. We rely heavily on community funding support. So for the families, all the activities or the follow-up activities, they're provided free of charge to the young people and their families, apart from a pair of boots and basic clothing that the young people will need to provide. In terms of the ask or the request of council, through Harcourt South Coast, we've been doing.
You have 1 minute left. Sorry.
We've been doing some fundraising locally to help support a team from Victor Harbor on the program next year. So I'd be very interested to find out through council if there's the opportunity for some grant funding or the opportunity for some funding to help support a team from Victor Harbor to go on our program next year.
Thank you very much, and I think you've left all of us with some thoughts that we need to discuss. We have regular briefings, and so I'll ask the CEO to perhaps bring this up at a briefing that we can discuss and see whether or not there's a sponsorship that's available, that we may be able to sponsor a child from the school, but we can discuss that at a briefing and get back to you. Thank you. Now back to the agenda. I didn't receive any questions from the gallery within the 7 days prior to the meeting, so we have no questions from the gallery and we have no petitions. If we go to 9.1, we're looking at outstanding resolutions, and the recommendation is that council receive and note the report. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to that or have any questions? No. Does anybody else have any questions? Councillor Burns and then Councillor Kuremba.
Thank you. I'd actually request this gets deferred to the December meeting. I was going through some of the resolutions and couldn't find where there was council decisions being made, and I just need a bit more time to go through to actually validate and fact check some of the, because each of them should align to a decision that's actually been made by council. Some of them may be from the previous council.
Can you be a bit more specific, and Victoria may be able to answer some of those questions?
There's probably quite a few that I had questions on that I needed to check. Probably about 2/3 of the ones that still are outstanding.
Want to respond to that, Victoria?
Yes, so through the mayor, I mean, happy to take any of your questions. You've got plenty of opportunity to direct any of those questions through to me. The actual minute reference is provided to all of them. And if they are from the previous council, they've been on the same list since the new term commenced. But happy to take any of your questions on board.
Okay, yeah, I just actually want to see the actual decisions that were made, and I've gone through, I started going through some of them. There was one, obviously, happened whilst I wasn't here, so I don't know how accurate that is or not, but a number of them I just would actually like the opportunity to actually check to make sure what's here. For example, talk about the renaming of Kent Reserve and saying that the Heritage Advisory Committee had agreed. Well, last Heritage Committee meeting, there was a consensus not to agree to the renaming, and that was actually wrong in further up in the agenda. So I will talk to that. So it's really not that it doesn't get dealt with. It's just an opportunity to go through to satisfy myself that it's all.
Sure. If you've got any questions for the CEO, please direct them to her, and I'm sure she can answer. Councillor Kuremba, you had a question?
Yeah, it was just regarding the last resolution we sort of brought up before. I distinctly remember that I think this motion that was brought up originally by yourself, it didn't meet the time. So then,
sorry, which motion are you referring to?
19.2, or it was the motion without notice, responsible person of the council, member behavioural policy, management policy. And Councillor Quinton then brought it up, but we did have discussion about it, and I believe it was going to be brought back for some further discussion, but now it seems to be have been made into a resolution that this is going to happen. So I'd like to be able to put that back.
I wasn't at that meeting, so I can't recall what occurred, but I'll ask the CEO.
I'd just like to check the video, that's all I'm saying, is because I don't think this is exactly reflective of what happened on the night, that's all.
Well, my recollection it was that Councillor Quinton did move the motion, but it is still to come back. That's why it's on the outstanding resolutions. Yeah. Because it still requires further consideration. There is no decision made.
Oh, right, okay.
The actual resolution is here as it's written, that following consultation with myself and manager of HR and other suitable staff, that another person be responsible for a responsible officer be brought back to the council for consideration. So there isn't another person that's been appointed. Council can only do that. It was for a discussion to occur.
Oh, right. I'm just saying there's nothing here that says it's going to be brought back that I can read. It just says that you'll choose a responsible person.
The follow-up action as the CEO is working with the governance policy officer in terms of its implementation, which would require a workshop. It still needs to have consideration to come back to the chamber.
Thank you for that clarification. So it will be coming back prior to.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So you're fine with that now, Councillor Kuremba? You've clarified that follow-up action is exactly as you wanted. Councillor Burns, initially you said you wanted to defer this motion. Is that a formal motion that you're putting in? Yes, it is a formal motion. Do I have a seconder for that formal motion? Councillor Karemba seconding that. All those in favour of the formal motion? Those against? That's lost. Thank you. We go back to the original motion that the council receive and note the outstanding resolutions report. Councillor Henderson.
Just a comment for Councillor Burns. There is a date, a meeting date and a minute number associated with every item. So I'm really very surprised if you can't find the details of the outstanding resolutions.
Sorry, I'd rather that anything that was spoken to came through me as the chair, and Councillor Burns
Thank you,
will, I've let Councillor Burns know to ask the CEO. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just a question on the Encounter Bay Recreation Ground pedestrian access, dated the 28th of January 2020. I see in the follow-up actions, but I'm just wondering for safety purposes, can we not put in a pedestrian crossing for safety of crossing that busy road, Armstrong Road, and then, or are we reliant on the fact of what Investigator College wants or the Victor Harbor High School wants as to where that crossing actually goes?
I think we're reliant also on the state government, Councillor Kemp, because even though that's a council road, DIPTI are responsible for it. You might remember when we were trying to get the speed limit decreased a number of times. But Victoria might have something to add to that.
Yeah, so the pedestrian refuge is already there. It was installed between the Encounter Bay Football Club and Ewan Terrace, the end of Ewan Terrace. So that's already there. It was more around the actual connecting path between the schools. And there has been some consideration. So it's between Investigator College and Victor Harbor High School, just a pathway that that needs to have further consideration. And we were looking at that as part of the precinct. So the actual pedestrian refuge is already there. That was installed, I think, about 18 months ago.
Are there any further questions about item 9.1? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.2 is the annual report, and I'll do the recommendation 1 and 2 on block unless there are anyone who wants me to do them separately. You want them done separately?
I'm happy to do on block. There's some errors need correction, and if they get corrected, I'm happy for it to go through.
Okay. If you're happy on block, everyone else is happy on block. Councillor Kremper, you don't want them on block? No. Okay. The first recommendation is that council adopt the annual report. Does someone want to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that? Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to the annual report? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Burns?
I'm happy if the corrections get noted and get changed, then I'm happy to support the annual report.
Can you
I
talk
can give
to
you
the
page by page.
you can do it page by page?
On page 27 of the annual report.
Let me just get to that. Oh.
Yep.
Page 27 of the council member report. Yep.
It had that meeting attendance that I attended 9. I was actually attended 10. I only missed one meeting when I was overseas.
We can check our records.
That's fine. Yep. The other was on the councillor profiles where it lists the different committees that people are on. That was if you're listing all the committees, it's missing the Murray Downs and also the Victor Harbour Primary School for myself, and the CAP meeting where both Councillor Corimba and myself were on that, except for I think it was in May, it got changed to other members. But during that period of up to the 30th of June, if it's going to reflect the respective committees, it should actually have all of them on there.
So you and Councillor Corimba were on the CAP until you both resigned. In what month did you resign?
It was on the date. It was in the council minutes where they elected. Sorry, had a bit of paper. The dates. Sorry, I don't have it. I thought I brought it with me.
All right, we can look that up.
Yep.
And check those.
Correct. And on page 57, where you've got the advisory and work groups, under the agribusiness, the arts, boating, heritage, recreation, and Victor, I think it's important to add in the councillors like it is on every other page.
You think that it's important to add? I'm not quite sure what you're talking about.
So on
Page 57, I see that.
Page 54, 55, 56, every committee and group has all the respective councillors listed. Under advisory and working groups, you've got the groups, but none of the councillors that are on.
That's because on page 23, the groups that you are, the committees and advisory group appointments are all listed there.
And under the regional representation should also include the Murray Downs Association.
Okay, I'll let
Page
Victoria know
57.
that. She can check her records.
Thank you.
Are there any other queries that you've got?
That was it.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody else got any questions? Councillor Corimba?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Is there any reason why we cannot have on page 35 the complete salary of the CEO and the directors, including all benefits and allowances,
Victoria, do
to
you
give a
want
true
start?
representation of costs, some of the costs, community?
Well, what's listed there is what we're required to put in there in terms of my salary.
Yeah, I understand what's required. Is there any reason why we couldn't put everything up to give a true indication of costs?
We can.
Okay, thank you. The only other question I had
If
was...
that's something that the council want, this has already been to council following.
No, it's been workshop to council and
workshop.
been to the audit committee, and it has been shared with members previously, but they're about to endorse it, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Changes.
All right.
Thank you. The only other question that was raised from the community was page 38. We talk about being a diverse council, but there seems to be quite a gender, I guess, skew with in upper management. Is there anything, it was just asked as to why that may be?
Just got some awesome women working in the organisation.
Yeah, I understand that's a pretty interesting comment, but I'm just wondering if that was the other way around. Would that answer be suffice?
If
No,
we
maybe
have
we have
an
some
awesome man working in
the
our organisation
organisation.
as well,
Yeah.
in terms of we recruit based on skills and qualification, and
Okay.
we just the way it's emerged.
That's fine. That's
So-
what I'll pass on to the constituents.
We have awesome staff working in our organisation.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Corimba. Are there any other questions or any other comments? Thank you, Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, just one issue I have with it. I don't necessarily appreciate having my photo in there twice, 4 years apart. We can see the difference that 4 years on council makes, but I'm prepared to live with that one.
Yeah, wait till you've been on council 10 years plus. Thank you. If there's no further comments, I'll put that first recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The second one is that council enter the 2022-23 annual report in the 2024 Australasian Reporting Awards. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and seconding Councillor Burns. Do either of you want to speak to that?
Just that it's a very good presentation, well laid out, and I think it's very readable which is good.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller, did you want to speak to that? No, does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
I know that we possibly get some benefit out of going into these awards. I mean, I'm just wondering, it's our third year now, I believe, and are we really getting any further benefits on feedback, do you believe? Or because we get to a point that, you know, it's great, but are we just beating an old drum?
If I'm through the mayor, I believe we have. So we've gone from a bronze to a silver in terms of our awards. But I certainly wouldn't be, I think this would be the last time that we would look to enter them. I think it would be something we should do every few years, not every year. So I certainly wouldn't be recommending that we enter them again after this year. We've addressed all of the feedback that we've received the last few times we've entered. But yeah, I don't think it's something we need to be doing every year.
Thank you. Are there any other further comments, suggestions, questions? Put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now come to the really interesting part, the 2022-23 financial statements. And the recommendation is that Council receive and note the financial statements reporting an operating deficit of around $1.2 million and an unmodified audit option for both the financial statements and internal controls. This has already gone to the audit committee, who has endorsed it and brought it to Council. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson, thank you. And seconding that? Thank you very much. Councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? No, does anybody want to speak to it? Thank you, Councillor Burns.
Just to let you know, I had a concern in the audit committee. I still have a similar concern now about the deficit. All the other financial figures I'm okay with, and I understand the reason for the deficit. I just would much prefer we didn't have a deficit for the community.
Any other comments? Not, I'll put it to the Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, I just want to sort of make it clear to the chamber that at the audit committee, there was some discussion around the deficits and the number of deficits we're having over a period of time. That, you know, elected members got to be more cautious about when approving expenditure on the operating budget and try and minimise the deficit to the community, because it's saying one or two things. Either we're not raising enough rates, which means could be a trigger to raise rates, or the fact is that we're spending too much money. Maybe we should pull back on our expenditure. So I think the audit committee is getting a bit concerned about how elected members are approving excessive, what they seem to be more of excessive expenditure over the last few years and going forward. So it's just a note to be cautious about where as we go forward. We set a budget and we always know that we get a lot of future applications for expenditure to go through, but I know there's very good ones and some we have to do, or maybe some we don't need to do, but I think we just got to be a bit more cautious about it, because I don't think it's sending a right message about how council is managing its finances if we're running too many deficits. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Any further discussion? In that case, I'll put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.4, the September budget review. And in doing that, I'll echo really what Councillor Kemp was saying in terms of the audit committee reminding the council that they made a commitment to maintain an operating surplus ratio of between -2 to 2%. And the committee notes that the operating surplus ratio continues to be significantly below -2% and recommends to council to exercise further scrutiny within decision making to ensure the ratio stays within the set targets. So that's just a reminder from the audit committee in relation to the operating surplus ratio, which links back to what Councillor Kemp was saying previously about the financial statements. So the recommendation for the September budget review is that council endorse the budget review, providing net capital expenditure of around $10 million and an operating deficit of $1.7 million. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Henderson, I note you seem to be the only one moving things tonight, and I'd encourage others to please do that as well. So it's not just one person doing that. Does someone want to second that? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp, oh, sorry, Councillor Henderson.
I just have a question, actually. The depot building, the expenditure for that has been increased by 35,000. I'm wondering why, or has something unexpected occurred that we weren't prepared for?
Basically, just an increase in the cost of actually finding the building. So it has been purchased and it will goes into place in January, I think it is. But yeah, it was just trying to find something. As you can appreciate, transportables are very hard to find at the minute, even second-hand ones.
Councillor Kemp, I think, and then Councillor Karimba.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question along the lines that the operating deficit is blowing out. The ratio is 5.1%. -2 was -0.51%. So it is increasing. I know the CEO at occasions talks about, finding savings within its budget and what workforce plan we have and also what we're delivering. Again, this comes back to around productivity and also will the CEO provide some indication of what savings will take place to try and reduce this deficit and get it back within our ratio in this financial year? Or does the chamber needs to move a motion to bring that back to within ratio?
So through the Mayor, given this is only the first review of 3 months into your adopted budget, I feel quite confident that we will be looking for efficiencies. We're obviously only 3 months into the delivery of a budget, so it's not actuals at this stage. These additional items were things that were not included in the adopted budget. 2 of those obviously endorsed by council. We knew they came after, but given we are so early into 3 months into this financial year, I would like to have the opportunity. We will find efficiencies and savings, and if we can't, I'd probably have a better idea of that in the new year after we've been 6 months into this budget.
Thank you, thank you, CEO. I guess this report's about 3 months into the financial year, and I understand that, but we're now 5 months into the financial year, so I'm just wondering, will you be able to bring to the chamber some items of savings that we could try and reduce this deficit down before the end of the financial year?
Yeah, just to reiterate, in the new year, in January, February, you will have your quarterly budget review will be presented. So these figures are as at of September, 30th September. So yes, we're 5 months in, but you don't have those figures. That's part of the December budget review.
Councillor Karimba.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question and a couple of other things. As Councillor Henderson brought up, the increase of $35,000 for the new depot building, the original costing, was that off a quote or an estimate?
Director Hayden.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, it was an estimate. We spent some months trying to get a second-hand transportable. In the end, it was going to cost us more to keep leasing the transportable as an operating cost than commit more $35,000 to capital and purchase one.
Okay, thanks. The other question I had was, and this can take this on notice, but what were the deficits for the last 2 quarters prior to this quarter? Are we basically trajectorying upwards in regards to deficits?
When you refer to a quarter, this is your first quarter. Like you adopted.
So say the last 2 of the last financial year.
So last financial year, you just dropped to the financial statements, and that was $1.2 million deficit. The council adopted a deficit in the 22-23 financial year.
Yep.
And with the exception of the flower expenses for the asbestos matter, we haven't had any deficits.
And just the other thing was that I note that it says note 2 and 3, basically the audit committee is telling us to watch what we're spending and try and curb these things. Is there, can I say this, is there, because a lot of these things keep coming back through administration as to we need money for this, we need money for that, but is there, and where the checks and balances of that, correct? We make the decision whether to approve the money or not?
Correct. All the decisions for the adoption of a budget comes through the chamber. The chamber also has obviously your own recommendations that come back through to administration.
I guess to use an analogy, I find it really hard when my daughter keeps coming to me for money. I keep giving it to her because I feel like I have to. I guess what I'm sort of getting at, is there any way that we can kind of break that cycle? Like, is there a better management, I guess, coming from administration? We seem to get a lot of requests for things above and beyond the budget. I'm just wondering what we're doing to address that moving forward.
Well, obviously, we will continue taking requests for support from our community. That's the way that most of the requests come through. We try and budget more appropriately when you're planning for your finances. But also, if you just reference point 3 from the Audit Committee's recommendation, it's about the administration making sure that you as a council have sufficient information when you're looking at the risks about making decisions. And sometimes what you'll need to do is stop doing something if you want to do something else. You can't be all things to all people.
So I guess that comes back to that analogy I had with the glass jar with the marbles. Maybe we need something like that to give the chamber an indication of how much money we actually do have. And
again, we do provide you with that budgeted information in regards to the increase to your budget. So council adopts a budget. And throughout the year, you need to monitor that budget. And then at the end of the year, you do your financial statements, which is your actual expenditure. Yes, where we can, we will look for efficiency. So if we do bring requests for money to the chamber, we will look to see if we can find any efficiencies so that you're not actually adding to your budget. Sometimes that's not possible. We also need to look at our resourcing, because sometimes it's not just a dollar figure. We don't have the resources as an organisation to keep adding more and more and delivering more and more.
And is there a set of guidelines that administration would adhere to when it comes to people coming for money, or is it just whatever?
Well, it's based on the council's policies. You've got a number of different policies in place as to how you will support the community, but it doesn't stop anyone from our community coming and doing a deputation or putting a petition or requesting something. We need to listen to our community, and if and when we can address that, we do.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Karimba, Kelly, Director of Finance, Kelly Knight-Stacey, has let me know that we haven't had a deficit since 2013, apart from the last year's deficit. We have not. Oh no, any other questions? Councillor Burns?
So thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what the Mayor has said, what Councillor Kemp has said. In the Audit Committee, they were adamant that they did not want to see another deficit in the next financial year, and also felt that elected members were not getting enough detail in the information provided by administration when making financial decisions, and requested that whilst administration include things like risk and impact to budget, provide more detail so the elected members actually understand impact on borrowing, impact on our ratios, and because we can get to a point where administration are caught in the middle, where elected members are making decisions in isolation without understanding the full implication, and administration will have to seek additional borrowings or additional staff to deliver the services. So the Audit Committee just wanted elected members to know that we as a collective are making decisions, but the Audit Committee has set some expectations going into the next financial year. Just need to make it, because every decision you make will have an impact on both the administration and the community, and we've got to be careful we don't overspend.
Can you respond to that?
No, obviously, Councillor Burns being on the Audit Committee, but I just want to clarify, it wasn't the Audit Committee said it was adamant it didn't want to see any more deficits. We need to work within our ratios, which is a -2 to a +2, which we need to stay within our ratios.
Are there any further points for discussion? Councillor Crimber, you've already spoken. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a question. Do we know what sort of savings we would have to incur to achieve that from, I think it's, what are we now, 5.1, is that right? Minus 5.1 back up to, or to get back within our ratio?
I'd need to take that on notice, but please just also note the council adopted a deficit budget because of the corporate systems project, and that is something the audit committee is well aware of and would acknowledge as being a decision, a conscious decision the council made, because it can't capitalise on the corporate system. So if the decision for a deficit budget is for a particular project, which the corporate system is 1.5 million, because it's got a life longer than a year, then that's a considered decision. It's the creep of increasing your deficit once you've adopted your budget that is the concern. But in terms of the figure for bringing it back from to the -2, Kelly might be able to do that because she's quicker with a calculator than me.
Through the Mayor, I would need to work that out as well. But essentially, the amount that's increased from the adoption of the budget, as Victoria said, adopting a deficit budget, there's a 0.8% that ratio has increased by because of the budget amendments included in this budget review. And that's around $300,000 that was added into the budget that caused that extra 0.8. So to pull it back essentially to the -0.2, we would probably be needing to shave off approximately $1 million.
Is there any further discussion from the floor? If not, Councillor Henderson, did you want to close the debate? Put it to the floor then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. We now go to 9.5, which is the budget schedule and parameters. And I'm happy to do that on block, the two recommendations, if everyone's happy with that. Happy with that? Moving on block, Councillor Mann, thank you. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Do either of you want to speak to that? No, no. Councillor Burns?
Just a quick clarification. With income, do you define that as rates and leases less grants?
It's rates and fees and charges and possibly any other grants. Yes, it's income.
Okay, but if a grant is year specific, whilst it, you have it in, it's no guarantee it'll be each year unless.
No, the only grants we'd probably be having there is the local government assistance grants, which we know roughly, but any other grants are only on application and usually it comes in and goes out. So it's, treated.
Thank you.
Councillor Karembo?
Sorry, just to clarify that. So grants outside of those ones you just mentioned that we get as we need them aren't actually included in income on a regular basis?
No, it's only if we're successful. If we have stated a project's in the budget for $10 million and we're relying on a $5 million grant, but it'd only be subject to that grant funding, it would be provided in there. But if we don't get the grant funding, then the expenditure doesn't happen. So then the expenditure is removed as well.
And grants that we get for our community services are also put in there, Councillor Karembo. Are there any further questions? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just a bit concerned about the schedule that's for next 24-25 budget. It's only 3 workshops you got planned for January, February, March. To me, I find that's insufficient, really, if we really want to do some due diligence on the budget, unpack it properly, operating and capital. I know the staff do a great job in presenting, and the managers can talk about their portfolios and how they want money, etc., under the capital, things like that. But I think 5:30 up to about 8:30 at night, 3 hours. So it's 9 hours. We're going to talk about a $40+ million budget for another year. I think we need to spend more time on it and apply more due diligence to it. So I would like to see, let's lock us away for a day, for an example, and let's break it down and work through it and have those rigid debates which our community would expect us to do. I think we can't achieve it in 3 small workshops to achieve the outcomes. And hopefully that we are in a better position, to not unpack the budget as we're trying to spend it through the financial year. If we really had a good understanding of what we're trying to achieve, I think, it'd be better for elected members to have those understanding, work through it so they know what we are doing, especially for the new members. It's their first budget. I think it's a good idea to actually have a good, robust discussion.
I see there being 4 here, Councillor Kemp. Yep.
So that's not really breaking it down and unpacking it. That's really about looking at what the public has said.
Through the Mayor, I'm happy to take on board and include in here that we can incorporate a one-day workshop within here. I mean, this is just really a guide. It doesn't stop us having a workshop every week, which we will if we need to. And this will be the second budget of this new council, but absolutely happy to take that on board and can put, with the addition of a full-day workshop. But I just don't know when that will be. But yeah, I appreciate more workshops the better. I'd rather be doing that than deferring and delaying when we get into the chamber.
Thank you for the correction on how often we've done it. I do apologise to the chamber and the community for that. But yes, I think it's better for us again, to me, like we're approving this schedule, so it looked to me like this is locked in. If you're saying there's more opportunity for further, I would certainly be open to that.
Have you got a question, Councillor Corimba?
Yeah, I do. Regarding what Councillor Kemp said about this not being locked in and that we can, is that basically us just an individual member asking for an extra workshop, or is that something the chamber has to vote on, or how is that facilitated?
No, so I can organise a briefing session based on the appetite of the chamber. That if you, as a chamber, make a decision to do so, I have to obviously follow that instruction as well. But this is really just an indication so our staff, our administration can work around collection of that information, because it's quite a lot of time to collate all the material that is needed. But each time we do a workshop, if we need more time and that's not enough time, we will have another workshop. And that's why we say in terms of the recommendation, those dates are subject to confirmation because we may need more.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Kemp. I personally think we should be spending a bit more time on this. It's probably one of the biggest decisions we make for the year. So I would hope the other elected members would see value in having extra workshops just to break it all down so that when we do make the decision to approve it, we know 100% that we're really happy with everything that's in there and there's no toing and froing after that.
Remember, you're meant to be asking a question, not continuing your dialogue. Just reminding you. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to this? Councillor Mann, do you want to close the debate? No, in that case, I'll put the recommendation which is done on block to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.6 is the Audit Committee Terms of Reference, and the recommendation is that Council adopt the reviewed Terms of Reference and note that the committee has been renamed Audit Committee from Audit Committee to Audit and Risk Committee. And this is along the lines of the changes to the LGA legislation. Councillor Kemp was moving that and Councillor Mann is seconding that. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I think, again, we're very fortunate to have the independent people on our audit committee. We've been working with administration through the process of the risk component, and we've been ahead of the game compared to the rest of the state and other councils. So I think I compliment the administration and the independents in looking at the due diligence of the risk component, and the terms of reference now reflect that. So hopefully from now on we'll get a better outcome, and hopefully the audit committee will provide better support and information back to the chamber and to administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Mann, did you want to speak to this? Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Burns?
Just to say, as Councillor Kemp said, it's a true reflection of the meeting, and the audit committee were quite happy with this.
Thank you. Councillor Corimba, you were about to put your hand up. Do you want to speak? No. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Kemp, do you want to close the debate? Really, you were the only one speaking, I think. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. 9.7, which is the reviewed enforcement policy, and this is in relation to the PDI Act. Would someone like to move that council adopt the reviewed enforcement policy? Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and seconded by Councillor Kemp, I think it was. Is that right? You want to speak to that, Councillor Schiller? Councillor Kemp?
Just a question, it might be not this one, but another one, but again, when we're making changes on things like enforcement policies and various policies, there is a component around the public consultation when we do policies, which can affect our community. This one won't have an impact on our community, so it's not required to do a public consultation.
Through the mayor, it does have an impact on our community because it's an enforcement and order making policy, but it's not a policy we're required to undertake community consultation on. And the main changes are legislative can't say the word, changes, sorry. And in particular, if we update the enforcement policy, we update the order making policy at the same time because the two speak to each other, and the main changes are the implementation of the requirements under the PDI Act.
Councillor Karimba, you've got a question? Or
Thank you, Mayor. Policy 7.6, down the bottom it says enforcement activities include patrolling streets and public places, inspecting premise either on a routine program basis or on a random basis. Are we talking about going onto people's property? Is that what that means?
If we needed to, if it was under the specific piece of legislation, because there's a number of acts that it covers.
Okay, and that would be without consent?
In most cases, we would we seek consent, but again, we can if we need to. If we have to retain a dog or something along those lines, we can.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any further questions or discussion? Councillor Burns and then Councillor Henderson.
I was reading through this in detail, and I understand a lot of the changes are legislative. However, I see a potential for a huge impact on the community, and I would have loved to have had a workshop with elected members before we actually agreed on this to understand community impact and understand the fines involved, because I think whilst it seems simple on paper, this is actually one area that has a potentially huge impact on the community.
Can you explain in what way it has a huge impact on the community, Councillor Burns? Because I didn't see that.
Because if this is, there are situations where it can get enforced or adopted which can create hardship on people in the community, and I much prefer that people get warnings, people get consulted before actually penalties occur.
Can you give me an example?
Well, say dog bylaws, a lot of the enforcement, parking, other areas. Reading this, it has that this is what council can do, and I'd like to understand what educational, because a lot of people may not be aware they're breaching something. So
in what way is this different? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand your question. In what way is the reviewed enforcement policy different from what's been happening before? We have dog bylaws,
well, it's
we
the
have
first
inspectors.
opportunity that we've had to actually review this policy. So in reading it and looking at it, it raised concerns to say, well, you know, it's quite extensive in what council can do, and I understand the intent is for extremes, not necessarily that they could do it, you know, when someone offends, fine them or implement a penalty straight away. But I'd just like to understand what the implication is on fines and to the community, just to be satisfied that what we're approving here has reasonable balance in it without being excessive. Because if this is enforced by overzealous people, it could actually create hardship. So there's a series of trust in this that it's going to be implemented correctly, and I'd like to better understand those checks and balances and understand the potential impact. And if I'm satisfied, then I'm happy to support it. But I would have liked this particular policy to have been workshopped before we, just so that we can better understand.
Well, I'm happy just to probably give you a little bit of feedback in terms of our enforcement policy. The policy is around we take an educative approach, and an expiation is usually the last case scenario that we'd like to implement. We will give a warning and formal warnings, which is usually the case. So our approach has always been an educative approach for whether it's through dog management, parking and other provisions. Obviously, in some cases when it's a serious matter, then we obviously take a more stronger approach. But this is our requirements, and the fees are all actually legislated. So they're set down by the state government in most cases. It's all in place. So this is basically our requirements of how we will enforce it in the City of Victor Harbor, and how our authorised officers follow their due diligence and requirements. They are trained to implement each of the areas that they can enforce a expiation on.
Okay. And is there any internal reviews whether, so someone can lodge a complaint to say,
Yep, you've got a policy in here in a moment, section 270, where a member of the community can actually review a decision of a council officer or of the council, and there's a process in which they can actually do that. And yeah, same systems apply, and we actually need to demonstrate we've actually followed our enforcement policy. When we've actually either expiated or waived an expiation, we need to make sure we have evidence that we've actually followed our appropriate processes in doing that.
Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson, you wanted to say something?
Just a couple of comments on the actual wording. I think there are a couple of grammatical anomalies left over from the editing. The first is under 2.1, page 2, title is purpose. And the second line, I'm wondering if the word to should be so, and so that any action is proportionate. And also the next line down, I think there is a word missing, to ensure that transparency, etc.
Thank you. We'll have a look at those.
And also on page 9, 6.4.4.1, I think the word "an" is now redundant because it's been made plural.
Thank you. We'll check those. Is there any further discussion from anybody? Councillor Schiller, did you want to close the debate? No. In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.8 is another review. This is the order making policy, and I'll do that on block if someone's happy to move that on block. Thank you very much, Councillor Burns, and seconding that, thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Burns?
Only that I've read it through in detail and it's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie? Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Not, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now have a review of the procurement policy, and this is a lot of these changes are in line with the corporate systems review, and the audit committee has also had a look at this in great detail. Councillor Mann, you're moving that, and do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Want to speak to that, Councillor Mann?
Yeah, just briefly to say that I'm happy with the procurement policy as it is now. 3 weeks ago, the audit committee have recommended that we endorse this reviewed procurement policy. And I guess, of course, as noted in the report, that as One Council is rolled out, there will be further reviews to look at how we can better utilise all the new services and systems that One Council will provide. So this is very much a living document in that respect.
Yeah, no, thank you. Quite right, Councillor Mann. Councillor Schiller, do you want to speak to this? No. Does anybody want to speak to this? Councillor Burns, Councillor Kemp.
Just wanted to clarify, in the audit committee, we did recommend, which is noted on page 113, that as part of the audit committee would like to see delegations and limits accessed within the new control environment. And the expectation was that that review would happen not within 3 years, but fairly soon. Certainly, we're looking at feedback for the next audit committee.
I don't see that. Oh, yes, yep. Okay. Thank you. And Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I won't be supporting this policy as it stands. The section I already have issues with is under the delegation to the CEO, which is the whole budget. Generally speaking, it was 150,000, and anything above that would come back to chamber for approval. I'm of the old school where approval of budget doesn't mean approval of expenditure, because things can change, especially when you've got a board in place. So I just feel that why they have these delegations put in place at various levels of financial tiers is because it's to minimise corruption within various levels of corporation or government, to actually look at that, and that's why they have it in place. At the moment, the CEO has approval to spend the budget according to this document, and the budget's off the top of my head was 45 million. She can sign off on that with no request back to chamber. Of course, the CEO has to bring back to chamber if anything outside the budget is required to be approved, and that's fair enough. But I just feel that, and I wouldn't mind coming back again and again to look at and revise our decision making on expenditure on some of the items. But at the moment, it's carte blanche that once it's approved, the CEO can then spend it throughout, and the council technically has lost control of expenditure of the budget, which is the council chamber is accountable for. So I won't support it as it stands at the moment.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Mann, would you like to close the debate?
Yeah, I guess just briefly, I definitely appreciate where Councillor Kemp's coming from. I take a different view around that. As it's been very well highlighted today, the council prepare the budget and go through all the workshops to say where we want the funds spent, and that is because council as an elected body sits in that strategic position for the council. We're not meant to be involved in all the day-to-day operational activities that a council goes through, and there's very good reason for that. We've heard a lot of community and businesses complain about the slow operation of council, and I just think about how much slower things would be if every single expenditure had to come back to a monthly meeting, and it was just 1 month at a time. I think the whole place would ground to a halt in that respect. So, but I think that this policy and as it's going to continue to be evolved with the new corporate systems review, achieves a balance between the concerns that Councillor Kemp's raised, but also making sure that council can stay operational and stay active in the current world and achieve what our ambitious budgets, which I believe they are.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. The debate is finished. Councillor Karemba. Councillor Mann closed the debate. I now put it to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Now move to 9.10, which is the internal review of a council decision procedure. That's what you were talking about previously, Councillor Burns, I think. And the recommendation is that council adopt the reviewed internal review of a council decision procedure as provided. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Burns. And seconding that, Councillor Quinton. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Burns?
Having read through this, I'm fine. One of the points I did mention in the audit committee, and I'd like to take the opportunity to reiterate now, on page 137, which is 5.3, was clarification of the word help. All council employees are expected to help where appropriate, customers wishing, and the context of that was in facilitating, not in actually writing submissions. So it's the degree of assistance, and they just need to be very careful because there's other legislation that can impact staff members with the best of intentions. So it was just getting clarification. And I think the following entry in there, involving access to interpreters' aids and so forth. So it's really talking about guidance and facilitation, not actually, it's the degree of help that they have to be careful of. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Quinton, do you want to speak to this? Does anybody want to speak to this? Okay, so I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Um, 9.11, the South Coast Regional University Study Hub. The recommendation, I'm happy to do that en bloc, unless someone would, en bloc, Councillor Burns, thank you, and seconding that, Councillor Mackenzie. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Burns?
Just inquiring about time frame. I think it's a very good proposal. I just wondered about time frame.
My understanding is that they're due to put in the grant application in the next month, in December, and so we should know in the new year. Well, in anticipation, as Victoria said, hopefully the 1st of July it would be able to start. So I think, yep, right. Councillor Mackenzie?
Just to add, I think it would be great for our community and really activate this side of town and our future plans for what's happening in that area.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp and Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question on future costings if this gets up and we are successful with the Murray Bridge and the partnership arrangements using our TAFE College. I'm just wondering, there's not much what I could find in the documentation of what will be the ongoing costs, whether it'll be a capital or operating. Is there any figures been done on this to date so elected members are aware of? It's great to approve this, but are we approving something which is going to come back and bite us financially? Because we don't know that yet.
Through the Mayor, so there is, based on the current grant application, and once it's complete, we'll provide members with a copy of that. It will be Murray Bridges grant application, but it's a full cost recovery through the grant, both capital and operating. So as I've stated in the report, it would only be our resources to oversee the two staff, and the payment of those staff would be directly from those grant fundings. So it's of no cost to council.
Councillor Henderson.
I was very pleased to see this on the agenda this evening because I was very much in support of the study hub here when we first put in the application for funding. And I believe it's very important that we give the young people the opportunity to study in their local area and stay in their local community whilst doing that study. Also, there's a lot of evidence that when students study in a regional or rural area, they tend to stay in that area when they follow their professional careers once they're qualified. And also to back that up, there's recently been some strong evidence that people who take placements in a rural or regional town stay in that community or select another regional town for their further career. So I think this is a brilliant idea. I'm very pleased to see it come sort of back in a different form.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'm not sure why Councillor Henderson was looking at Nick and I when making those remarks, but the evidence would have to be with her there. And yeah, no, I think it's an excellent recommendation to and this approach. It was very disappointing when we weren't successful in the last grant rounds, and I just want to really commend the CEO and her team for the what appears to be an exceptional amount of work that's gone into bringing this about, and we just hope that it's successful this time. So thank you very much.
If there's no further discussion, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's unanimously carried. And I'm thrilled that you've carried that. I can remember when I went, you may recall, you gave me some money to go to Canberra to the Local Government Association. And I had the opportunity to speak to the Minister of Education there and told him about the disappointment that we had, that we weren't able to have the Study Hub grant last time. And his response was that they had pulled the grant, a number of Study Hub grants, and were looking at funding a larger range of study hubs throughout the country in regional areas, because they recognised that regional students needed and wanted to work from home and study from home and have that opportunity. And so I was thrilled when the grants came up again. And you talked about the team, Councillor Mann and Steve Shotton, especially from Regional Development Australia, has been a really strong advocate for this and has met with the Minister many times. Rebecca Sharkey has been an advocate as well and has helped with getting this grant. And I think everybody who's been involved in the initial group has worked really hard to make sure that we get it. And looking at the model that we've now got, which we're calling the Hub of Hubs, it's one that actually works really well, that will save us money and will really be of benefit to not just young people looking at Marilyn in the area wanting to stay, but also older people that are continuing to study and doing further professional education that may feel as though they can't do it because they have to go to the city to study. And university has changed significantly since I was at university. A lot of it's done online now, so having a hub where people can study online with support is something that's going to really benefit not just Victor Harbor but the whole Fleurieu region. So I'm really looking forward to the day that we open up the new study hub and we can celebrate. We now move to 10.1, which is community development and the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan discussion paper. That's for consultation. And the recommendation is that Council endorse the commentary section identified as attachment B within the report to be lodged as the Council's submission for the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan discussion paper. And I know a number of us went to the discussions that the state government were having in relation to the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan. It was quite interesting. If someone would like to move that way. Councillor Henderson, thank you. And Councillor Burns, you went to those discussions. Do you want to second that?
Thank you.
Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, please, Mayor. I'm very pleased with a lot of the key themes outlined by the state government for this regional plan, such as employment, lands and social and infrastructure planning. However, one thing I'm not actually seeing here is transport, planning for transport, and particularly public transport. In the plan, Victor Harbor is outlined as a satellite city, but we will never be totally isolated from the metropolitan areas. So transport is still an issue, not just between Victor Harbor and the metropolitan Adelaide area, but also within our city here. We do lack public transport. And in our feedback, attachment B, there is a statement there to take climate consideration actions and targets that we've already passed in this council. We declared a climate emergency and we're working towards carbon neutrality by 2030, I think it is. And public transport and access to public transport, infrastructure for public transport is, in my opinion, a very big part of that. And I'm not seeing that word coming up anywhere in this. We do, as of this week, have a new Fleurieu and Kangaroo Island transport study, which is quite separate to this. So I hope the state government takes on board the feedback from that. But we did have a similar transport study 3 to 4 years ago, and we saw no changes in this area as a result of that. So I'm still optimistic, but I would really like to see transport in there somewhere, public transport, rail, bus networks.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I see that David Reid is in the gallery, who's the author of this report. I wonder, David, whether or not you could add something about public transport to that. Could you come up to the microphone down the end? Thank you. Is it possible for you to add something about public transport to the consultation paper?
Yes, it's open for discussion to incorporate any additional feedback. So if public transport would like to be mentioned specifically, that's fine, appropriate.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burns, did you want to speak to this?
Whilst I'm reading through this, I had some similar concerns. There was reference or statements made, things need to be improved without a strong enough statement like transport in here to actually say we really want to improve that public transport here.
Can you be specific so that Mr. Reid gets some direction in terms of what things might need to be expanded in the report?
It's in the public transport within Victor, but also the links with Adelaide, both road and rail, for consideration to improve the links. If you're getting the number of growth they're forecasting, but you're keeping the roads and infrastructure the same, there's going to be issues. So there has to be road and infrastructure improvements. And part of that also has to be improvements with public transport between regional city, Adelaide and Victor, and also within Victor itself. And to areas along the Fleurieu coast, because a lot of the growth pattern is between us and Gula. Now, they may do it in stages, they may not be able to do it. You have different governments, different elections, but there's nothing saying that we can't strongly word it so that it seems as being of high importance.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councillor Karemba and then Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just regarding, I think it's point 34, need to plan for another 300 homes for the next 30 years. That's obviously not in Victor, 300 homes, assuming. That's all of Adelaide. Do we know can we find out what the percentage of that 300 homes they're hoping to be down this way? Is that possible?
So it's only open for discussion at the moment for the drafting. So the next 10 months will be where the attention to detail will fall out. I believe there's approximately 700 submissions so far on the discussion paper. Our council would be one of them. And if the commentary section's adopted, there's like 50 or so points in there. So it's the detail is yet to come.
And sorry, Councillor Karemba, you meant 300,000, not 300.
I said 300,000, did I?
You
sorry,
said 300.
My apologies. 300,000. Yes, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no dramas. Hopefully we get 300,000 down there. The other one was 44, trunk investment, including Victor Harbour Road duplication. That's the Victor Harbour to Adelaide Road. They're talking about duplicating. That's what they want to do. How does that go with councils? I guess because we basically shut down the ability for that road to be, I think there was an overtaking lane. There was, that got dropped by state government, but now they're talking, according to this, are they talking about duplicating the whole thing? Because we kind of went against that, didn't we? Is that as council? I remember seeing the CEO and the mayor in the paper.
We didn't vote against it. The community,
not voting, but you petitioned to have it not happen. So.
The community were concerned about a number of trees being removed. So the Department of Transport haven't ruled it out. They're just looking at better design alternatives, and they supported the High Marsh Tier intersection.
Yeah.
But in terms of the duplication, so there is already the duplication of South Road, going past the McLaren turn-off and heading South Road, and the Victor Harbour duplication is pretty much to McLaren Vale, or then up to a little bit up to the Wollonga Hill. But the talk further than that is some of the talk that has recently been now reconsidered by the state government in terms of that duplication coming into Victor Harbour.
Because obviously that, with the overtaking lanes, we would have lost some trees. But if we're talking about duplication the whole way, I can surmise that that'd be a hell of a lot more trees than what would have been just the overtaking then.
Absolutely. And that certainly, I don't believe that is the case. So I believe it's current works because it's significant amount of money that those works have already been undertaken have cost.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Schiller.
A few questions and comments all intermingled. I realise we had Craig Holden, and I can't recall the lady's name who came and spoke to us about the Greater Adelaide plan, but I would have liked to have been able to individually workshop it as well, because all of the commentary has come from administration and we haven't had the ability to personalise it in any way. I realise it's a high-level document and very aspirational, as David would say, but it would have been nice to. This is, you know, a fairly important document for Victor Harbor and the state, and I would like to have that opportunity to sit down and discuss it in a briefing session prior to this. I realise there must be some fairly tight deadlines. We're having another session. When is that? Wednesday, is it? Yeah. So just a comment. I've actually put my own submission into the Greater Adelaide Plan. I've got my own personal opinions that I placed in that particular submission. I had a heavy focus on trying to get either duplication or a much better road system to Victor Harbor. Another pointer I had was the one which I will bring up tonight, this evening, about the fact that Victor Harbor currently has a major dip road which goes through the middle of our city, and we're looking at this concept of living close to where you work and walkability and the introduction of a lot of e-bikes within the town. So, you know, that focus is something that I've put in my submission. I had a heavy focus on affordable housing and also being within close proximity to locations like the new retail precinct that's cropped up over the last few years, which has been in the Coles, Audi, Bunnings area. And so I sort of have had a interest in medium density housing in that particular area, and also looking at our zoning in the centre of our township to adopt to a more modern lifestyle, to basically be getting our younger people, our tradies, our nurses, all the people that we need to service, you know, all of our population. So that's just my own commentary on how I took my submission to the Greater Adelaide Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do you want to respond?
Just to add to that, Councillor Schiller, so this is just our feedback on the initial discussion paper. There will be further consultation next year. This is really our part to make sure that we want to be at the table, and it sort of feeds in nicely to the urban growth management strategy that this council is doing, and all of those detailed documents that David has shared some of them with you, which gives you that statistical data that we can really feed in with some informed information about those needs. So this is not by any means our only submission. This is really just making sure they know we have a lot to say as part of the discussion before they then start going on to the next stage of the consultation. So we will make sure members, there will be further opportunity for workshopping with members. Absolutely.
Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, just quickly, I'm very happy with the submission. I think it really shows Victor Harbor in a great light in terms of that we're ready and willing to be involved in this Greater Adelaide Plan and to play that bigger role in our state. And I know from the discussions that we've had in the workshops with the representatives that there's a very exciting future for Victor Harbor in terms of the state and the importance of our city, especially for the southern region. And I think it's just a very exciting time for Victor Harbor. And I think this is great in, as the CEO said, feeding into that urban growth management strategy, where I think the points raised by Councillor Schiller, which are very valid, we can to a greater extent include in that discussion as well. So I think this is just a very exciting time to be working through all these highly strategic and future focused plans for our town and our state.
Councillor Mann. Councillor Karimba?
Just had
Dave, you got a
a
question?
question, yeah. So all of this that the government are trying to do, this is all based on their projection. I remember we had a couple of people here come and give us a presentation. This is all projected on current immigration levels. Is that correct?
The background of the statistics I'm not aware of beyond the actual discussion paper, so it's all pretty vague and very open. So it's the state government policies and initiatives that talk about immigration and birth rates and all of their projections and data and so on.
Can we get some clarification as to what is driving this amount of development, or, you know, this massive increase? Because I remember there was talk about they look at Victor Harbour as being the next Mount Barker, and I'm a bit concerned with what's going on
Sorry,
down there.
Councillor Karimba, you've got a question. Are there any more discussion points? Councillor Kemp?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Well done, David. There's a huge document to go through, and I've tried to read what's out there at the moment, and it's sort of surprising that, you know, the government's looking more to the northern suburbs of expansion in growth. The south will be growing, but not to the same extreme as the north, and a lot of the growth is going to be in Goolwa, not Victor Harbour. So I'm not quite sure how we fit into the scheme of things, but let's give it a go and give them our feedback. The only question I would ask of you, David, is did you consider in your submissions back as our first stage is about the livability census, because that's about what the community wants in its community and how they want to live in their community, and provide that feedback to the government that this is what we want and we don't want to, change. And also the Resilience Future project, that there's a lot of good outcomes out of that, or how we build resilience to protect our community. So I'm just wondering whether those two documents, information of that could be a benefit to put into this one, or would that come at a later stage, do you believe?
Yeah, no, good point. Page 166, the top bullet point mentions the livability census by place score will be provided to them, as well as council's interest in the future living code amendment. Not too sure about the second one that you were talking about.
Resilience Future project, which we did about 2 years ago, it highlighted areas of risk where we need to develop our resilience too. The CEO certainly can speak to it, but she was part of the process too. So again, we haven't sort of blown the dust off that one yet to see exactly how we can move forward in our planning in that area. So unless there's a further workshops coming with that CEO, I don't know.
No, there's nothing planned at this stage. A lot of the work that we've been doing with Business Victor Harbour has based on that. It's just the way in which we approach how we do things as a community, being more resilient and more creative and more innovative. But there are some elements in there around, our community's growth. And
Thank you. Are there any further discussion points? No. Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate?
Yes, just briefly, I just want to say, like Councillor Schiller, I gave my own private feedback on the Greater Adelaide Plan on the day that the Allsay website released it. And I know there are people in the gallery who have done the same. And I would encourage any members of the community listening to do that, because the government does ask for our opinion, and the more feedback they have, the more they will know what our communities want and look forward to. And in that feedback, there was reference to livability and green spaces, and there was plenty of opportunity for individuals to feedback on all of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. The debate's closed. All those in favour of the recommendation and those against, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And thank you for those that are putting in private submissions as well, and members of the community that are here. Marilyn said that you've been putting in your own submission. I think that's fantastic. It just shows how much people do care about the place that we live. I think it's great. We're now up to something similar, 10.2, which is the Victor Harbour Urban Growth Management Strategy. And there isn't an acronym for that. What do you call it? UGMS? I can never remember it, but it's the UGMS. The recommendation is that council provide a pre-budget commitment of $168,000 to next year's budget, so not this year, but for next year, to enable the continuation of the Urban Growth Management Strategy project and timely procurement process for engaging a consultant to commence preparation of the strategy in early 2024. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Burns, and seconding Councillor Schiller. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Burns?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Normally I'd be hesitant about pre-budget commitments, but I actually understand what's trying to be achieved here. My preference is that the engagement of consultancy also includes elected members and Business Victor as part of the preparation of the strategy for the review. I think having a consultant do it and just presenting the findings rather than allowing key stakeholders, including elected members, to be involved is not ideal. So.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be workshops with elected members around that. The consultant will be running the workshops and getting your ideas for what the community want. Councillor Schiller, did you want to speak to this?
I sat down with David and listened to his presentation orally, and it was great to listen to and to hear of the intention to try and futurise the urban growth management strategy so that things like interactive maps become part of the process, and that it is in tandem with the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan. So that's why I'm supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Does anybody else want to speak to this? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Environment and infrastructure. We now come to 12.1, renaming of Kent Reserve to Marawang, and the recommendation. Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it. The recommendation is that Council endorse the renaming of Kent Reserve to Marawang, and that in accordance with Section 2194 of the Local Government Act, that notification is undertaken with the effective date of the change being the date of this resolution. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to that? No, Councillor Quinton? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 points. I won't be supporting this. There's on page 180, it mentions at the 2nd November Heritage Advisory Group considering renaming, and the group was unable to reach a consensus. We actually did reach a consensus, which was to reject it. One community member was happy to change the name to combine both the requested Aboriginal name and Kent Reserve, which is what it is currently. So everyone else actually didn't want it changed. They saw the significance of Kent, historical value, and also understand that one person had requested this change in Victor Harbor. So I would normally be supportive, but in this case, the Heritage Advisory Group, in taking all consideration, actually voted against it, and also that you've got a dual name currently, and the community, as I understand, are quite happy to have a dual name.
Thank you. Any further comment? Councillor Schiller, and then was that your hand up, Councillor Krember? Councillor Schiller?
I agree with Stuart. I don't see why we can't retain Kent Reserve and also retain the new name. I think it's also about people just knowing where they're going. Kent Reserve, everyone knows where Kent Reserve is, and I think the two names can complement each other. So if there's some way that we could amend it so that both names are incorporated, I'd be happy to do that.
Sorry, can you please talk through the Mayor if you've got any
Sorry,
questions?
just for clarification, both names are currently on, I
Yep.
went down and took a photo to check that.
Yep, thank you. So councillor Schiller, you're asking whether or not both names can be retained with this motion?
Yes.
Yep, I'll just clarify that with a member of staff. Jody, can you answer that?
Thank you, through the Mayor. As was in the original council report, neither names have actually been gazetted. Kent Reserve is known as Kent Reserve because it's the reserve next to Kent Drive, which was the way that council used to name its reserve. So it's never been gazetted as Kent Reserve. It's actually an unnamed reserve. So we can have a dual naming. That would require a council decision, so an amendment to the recommendation. But the signage that is down there was put down there via the Rotary Club when they did some work a number of years ago, but it didn't name the reserve.
So councillor Schiller, if you want to amend the recommendation for it to be that the council endorses the renaming of Kent Reserve to Kent Reserve / Murrawang, and in accordance that notification is undertaken, then it's got a dual name. And if that amendment is accepted, then that can go that way.
I'd like to make that amendment, please.
So the amendment is that council endorses the renaming of Kent Reserve to, and you add in there Kent Reserve / Murrawang, and then the rest of the recommendation stays the same. Do I have a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Burns, you're seconding
Yes,
that? Thank you very much. Can I have all those in favour of the amendment? 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against the amendment? The amendment has won.
Can I have a division? Thank you.
Not on an amendment. No. So the motion now reads, council endorse the renaming of Kent Reserve to Kent Reserve Murrawang, and that in accordance with Local Government Act notifications undertaken with the effective date of the change being the date of the resolution. Okay. Councillor Mann?
Just a question whether we could have it the other way around. I'm just looking, when you type it in on the internet, they're all Murrawang Kent Reserve second, so it's like the opposite. And also on our sign, it's got Kent Reserve second. So I don't know if we want to go around and change it all again to align with how we've got it there. But just, I don't know if you reverse the order, it might align with all of the signage that we've been using.
If Councillor Burns and Councillor Schiller are you happy with that? We'll need to get, because you've already voted on it.
No, if I could just finish. It's now the motion. So your mover and seconder are Councillor Henderson and Councillor Quinton. So if they are happy with the variation now, because your amendment is now the motion, and the motion is moved by Henderson and Quinton.
Yes.
And if they are happy with the variation.
Are you happy with that variation? Thank you. Are you happy with that? Thank you very much. Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I think, again, it's a pathway I think our nation will be moving down, is part of our reconciliation plan is moving forward together, Aboriginal and our cultures, aligning with dual naming of a number of places now to recognise and identify, the Aboriginal side of those places and what they mean to them. And I think it's good that we can do that now as part of this. But I'd just like to ask a question about the public notice that goes to Given. Is that on page 181 at the top, it just talks about one newspaper. I know that we do public notices in the local newspaper. We have 2 local newspapers down here now, and of course not everyone who reads the Times reads the Fleurieu Sun, and not everyone who reads the Fleurieu Sun doesn't read the Times. So I'm just wondering, should we get a better exposure to our community on the public notice that should be in 2 papers? And a lot of people who read the Advertiser don't read the local papers. So again, a lot of our community miss out on public notices. So is it viable to ensure that we have to do it under legislation to put it in our papers? So I would see the Advertiser as a local paper as well, because a lot of people do buy the Advertiser, not the other ones. So sorry, Mike, you have to work on that one. But the point is, though, I think we just need to cover all bases when we're giving public notices.
Yep, we can do that and pop it in the Sun and the Advertiser as well. Councillor Quiremba, you wanted to speak? Do you still want to speak?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Councillor Burns says, I was part of that Heritage Committee, and yes, there was, it didn't reach consensus. The majority of us actually said to keep it as is, so I just wanted to make sure everybody knew what actually happened there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate?
Yes, just to say that I'm not sure who the Mr. Kent was, but apparently from what I read, he only spent one night at Encounter Bay, whereas the Ngarrindjeri people have got thousands of years of connection with that space. And I think it should just be the one name.
I'll now put this to the vote, and the recommendation is that Council rename Kent Reserve to Moarang Kent Reserve. And that in accordance with the Local Government Act, notifications undertaken with the date being the date of this resolution. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. Uh, 12.2 at 7:30, it's the road misalignment at Waipinga Road. And I'm happy to do the recommendation on block. Happy for that way, Councillor Burns, and seconding that, Councillor Schiller. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Burns?
Just that the $2,000 in legal costs, I'm hoping will be covered by OPEX somewhere, but everything else is cost negative, so.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller? No, does anybody else want to speak to that? Councillor Burke-Kemp?
Just a question on the cost of sale of this land. It's dated 2020, November 2020. Should it not be current market value, not 3 years old?
Kathy, sorry.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Yes, that the 2020 was done when this whole thing, so the you'll see that the 3 properties all needed realignment, so that valuation was done at the commencement of that. They've had to happen sequentially because basically the green one had to happen first before the purple triangle could be done. So they're all based on that valuation that was done in 2020.
Yes, I understand it was done in 2020, but you know, due diligence should not be current market value now since we're paying out on it. Or they're purchasing it off us.
Through the Mayor, we could have another one done. It would cost, if we went and did it again, it would cost us $5,000 each, because under the policy it says 2 independent valuations. If we went back and changed it, it would cost us $5,000. We could do that, noting also that the property owner has obviously been advised of that amount from the beginning, but we could go back and renegotiate and pay the $5,000 to have 2 more valuations prepared.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's just again community reading this, you know, wondering why, you know, we're applying a 3-year evaluation where we should be using current market values to, you know, for council to gain more money in that context, not ripping off anybody. It's about, you know, doing a due process of equity in what the value of the land is and to what they should be paid for. But I just raised it as to get the answers from you, Director Hayter, as to how it was undertaken and why. And I guess if the Chamber's happy with that evaluation, if that's what the council will get, compared to what it may get, I guess that's the council decision. So I just feel that, yeah. Anyway, just thank you. You answered the question.
Thank you. You should be able to explain to any community members that are concerned what Kathy Hayter said to you. Councillor Quiremba, you want to speak?
Yeah, I'd just like to add also, same belief. Land value here in the last, I'm sure everybody would have checked what their houses are worth, has gone up substantially, and I would probably argue that it would probably even have doubled that amount. So to spend 5,000 to gain an extra 10 seems good maths to me, but that's up to the chamber, I guess.
Is there any further discussion in relation to this? Put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. Naming of roads, Seascape Rise. The recommendation is that council approve the name of an unnamed road to Seascape Rise. It's not in the nomenclature list, so it has to come to council for council to give it the green light. I thought that I'd say that. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson, are you? Thank you. And Councillor Burns. You want to speak to it, Councillor Henderson?
Yes, just a bit of clarification. Are we renaming or naming an unnamed road to Seascape Parade? And the development is called Seascape Rise, because both have been used and I'm a little bit confused. So is it the road leading to Seascape Rise, which is the area for development, but the name is going to be Seascape Parade?
I can answer through the mayor.
Thank you.
The original proposal was for Seascape Parade. However, the requirements for a parade weren't met for the full length of the road. The road narrows as it goes around the corner. So the applicant was asked whether they would consider either shortening the road to just as parade for just that section, but they wanted to continue Seascape all the way. So they agreed to change it to Rise. The actual development's just called Seascape.
Thank you for that clarification, Jodie. Councillor Burns, did you want to speak to this?
No, I found it all self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or have anything they want to say? Not, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried. Minutes of council meetings. Fleurieu Regional Community Services Advisory Committee. The recommendation is that we receive those minutes. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mann and Councillor Schiller. Either of you want to speak to them? Anybody want to speak to those minutes? Put it to the floor. Oh, you do, Councillor Karemba?
Just a question. 9.6 of the September budget review, it says in point 3, the committee recommends to administration that they provide sufficient information to council when considering implications of DES decisions, including...
Sorry, you're on the one before
one?
that. You're on the wrong one.
My bad, sorry.
So we're on page 192, item 13.1.
Sorry, jumped the gun.
Does anybody have anything they want to say about this? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Audit committee minutes, 6th of November, and the recommendation is that council receive and note the minutes from the audit committee. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Karemba. And seconding Councillor Henderson. Councillor Karemba, do you want to speak to them?
Thanks, I'll try that again. 9.6, the committee recommends administration that they provide sufficient information to council when considering implications of decisions, including resource and operational allocations and financial sustainability risk. Provide sufficient information. Is this saying that we're not getting enough information, or are they suggesting we get more or different type, or we get...
Sorry, Councillor Burns, can you please speak through the mayor rather than discussion?
Yeah.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, it wasn't, we were not getting enough. They're just saying when you're making changes to your budget that you have sufficient information, that you're satisfied that you have sufficient information. There wasn't any question that you weren't getting enough, but members need to be satisfied that they have all the information they need to make any decisions.
Great, I just wanted you to clarify. So,
and we did repeat that in the item in regards to financial statements.
So ultimately, the onus is on us to believe we have enough, or we have sufficient information, correct?
If you don't believe you've got sufficient information, then please ask administration.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to this? No? Does anybody want to speak to this? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. I won't be supporting it, only because I believe the minutes are not correct, but that's something for the audit committee to deal with when we have our meeting next year. So I'll take it there. I suppose about sufficient information, it's quite interesting discussion around that. I think what came out of it from the chair was that when we're looking at budget deliberations and spending more money outside the budget, which we haven't planned for, that possibility that the administration could come up with proposals of what we can take out of the budget to cover the cost of the new budget item. So you're not just adding all the time, you're looking at and discussing what's going in, what can we take out and stop. So that's part of the process about information flow as well, to give the elected members more understanding, decision making that, yes, if you want this to go in, but these are the options that we may have to take out. So that's, I guess, a better way of dealing with decision making and making sure we're doing the right decisions. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp, is there any further discussion? Councillor Corimba, there's not really any debate for you to close. Do you want to say anything closing? Put it to the floor then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Subsidiaries and representative reports. The Horse Drome Authority September budget review, and the recommendation is to receive a note. The budget review detailing an unchanged contribution from council. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, thank you very much, Councillor McKenzie. Want to speak to that, Councillor Henderson? Councillor McKenzie? Does anybody want to speak to that? Not, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre annual report and financial statements. The recommendation is that council receive and note the annual report and financial statements as provided. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and seconded Councillor Quinton. You want to speak to that, Councillor Schiller? Councillor Quinton? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
Just a question. I'm just trying to, I guess it's to Director of Finances about the total deficit, and that's including council contribution. So we do have a deficit that the Aquatic Centre runs at, but also council contribution. But when you add all that up, that is the true deficit of that Aquatic Centre. So I'm just wondering why it's not sort of clearly articulated in the commentary about what is the actual true deficit.
Kelly?
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So within the financial statements, it does specify what is council contributions and the difference between what's taken in through the management fees of the YMCA. So it is split there within the financial statements themselves. Council's contributions, you're correct, there's two separate contributions. One is a cash contribution and one is an equity contribution, which is equal to the depreciation that council doesn't fund. And that's basically that amount, those two amounts put together is what it costs us to run the facility, excluding income received from other sources.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there any further discussion? You got a question, Councillor?
Clarification, please. So if that's for both council, is that correct, Director of Finance? And with the total cost of the equity adjustments and the cash contributions, about $1.5 million that comes from both councils?
I'll just have to have a look through the statements if you give me a moment. Through the Mayor, yes, it's approximately $1.5 million per council, including both the depreciation and the contributions.
Any further discussion? Councillor Corimbo, you'll be closing the debate if you speak. Close the debate.
I just had a question.
Yep.
The $83,000 due to electricity costs, is that split between the two councils or is that each?
Through the Mayor. So these statements are the combined statements of the authority. So it includes both councils' contributions. The $84,000 in electricity cost was actually more like $240,000, but was offset from some savings throughout the year.
Okay, thanks.
Take that debate is finished and I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. There are no matters of urgency. There are no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Corimbo and Councillor Schiller.
Thank you. Just a question regarding council vehicles. Do all council vehicles display council logos?
No.
No? Okay. Do we have a fleet management system, something that monitors kilometres, travel time, speeds, stuff like that?
We have fleet management for obviously our pool vehicles and also for our field staff vehicles, obviously for their use and they're contracted to particular jobs.
Yeah.
But it doesn't monitor speeds, but obviously it monitors their use and who's using them.
Okay.
Because they're booked in and out depending which departments, and then the various use is allocated.
And with the new computer system, would that incorporate that monitoring, like give a report, or is that a separate?
Well, we're using a new bookable system for our vehicles, so it just gives us better ability to monitor their use and allocation of their use. I'm not sure what sort of data you're after, but obviously the system helps us to keep track of the use and the turnover of those vehicles and how they're utilised across the organisation. So we have a better system with our pool vehicles now, as you'll notice with the badging of those vehicles out in the car park.
Just one more question regarding the badging. Is there any reason why all council vehicles aren't badged?
Only those vehicles that are pool vehicles are badged, or commuter use vehicles are all badged, and council field staff vehicles are badged. Those vehicles that are part of a person's salary package in terms of they have full personal private use as part of their package are not badged.
Thanks.
Councillor Schiller.
A question about committees and minutes. I've noticed that most of the committees within council have, we cut our minutes down pretty like to the bare minimum, and obviously that's partly for efficiency so that we can flick through the minutes quite quickly. But I noticed that out of all the committees that are within our council, and whether this is classed as a council committee, is that with the CAP committee, which is the Council Assessment Panel Committee, currently the mover and seconder of a motion is not noted at all. And if that motion is carried, it's not noted whether it's carried in full or whether it's just been carried with part of the committee approving that particular recommendation. And I just query whether the minute taking is there mandatory things that need to be in that minute taking, or is it to the discretion of the person writing the minutes?
The Director of Community Development will probably add to this, but they're not covered under the Local Government Act meeting procedures. They're covered under the PDI Act. So Graham may want to add to that, but they are different to council and council committee minutes.
Through the Mayor, yes, as per the CEO's explanation, it's quite different to council committee minutes under the Local Government Act, and the CAP has its own meeting procedures as well, and it's consolidated into the meeting procedures into how they maintain their minutes. So it's certainly not the choice of the minute taker, it's the way the committees or the panel is set up. It's not really a committee either, it's a panel.
So the rules around the minutes, is that across all council assessment panels throughout the state? Are they all using that same technique? My question is obviously that once a decision is made, there's minimal information there for people to see who's making these decisions and whether it was fully supported by the panel at the time. So a question that it's very minimalistic, and we expect that our minutes within every other committee at least have those small detail, the significant details in their minutes, and I don't see why such an important panel haven't got that information in their minutes.
Through the Mayor, certainly that's something that the panel could look at in terms of some feedback from council as to how it maintains its minutes, as to whether or not it's consistent with the way other CAP panels work. They can be quite different across the state. There's no set format really. A number of panels will hold their meetings in camera, for instance, and won't have any sort of public accessibility to it, where ours is quite open. So it does vary quite significantly across the state and from council to council.
Can you have a talk to the CAP chair and whoever takes the minutes to look if that can happen? Thank you. I think Stuart Burns, did you have your hand up?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to clarify through the Mayor that having been on the CAP, they go through an identical process to local council in that it's put up, it's voted on. It's just not been recorded the same, but we do everything else identical. And I agree with you, it should be recorded.
Yep. Director Pantas will have a chat to them. Are there any more questions without notice? No. In that case, then we move on to motions on notice. And this is a motion from you, Angela, Councillor Schiller. And would you like to read out your motion? Or would you like me to read it out?
Just prior to being read out, this particular motion is from the motion that I sent out initially has got an addition. So, and I will speak to that once we have it read out to us.
So the motion is, Councillor Schiller's motion is that council requests that DIT install a signalised, beg your pardon, pedestrian crossing as a priority to enable safe pedestrian access across Adelaide Road in the Coles, Bunnings and Aldi retail and service precinct. And 2, that administration share the residents' concerns with SA Health for consideration of a signalised pedestrian crossing to be included as part of the new ambulance station on Adelaide Road. Are you happy for those on block, Councillor Schiller? Yep. Would you like to speak to your motions?
Thank you. Part of the reason that I brought this motion out at this point in time is that obviously the ambulance station has been approved, the development has been approved, and so there is a bit more opportunity for leverage for this to occur in conjunction with the ambulance station going in. This area is growing significantly. We have got a new development going across in, I can't think of the spot at the moment, but our new development that's going in there, and there's more and more retail facilities there and services that are coming up there. At the moment, vehicles have great access to most of the retail and service that are within that area, and it's really been designed for vehicle access, but very little consideration has gone in for pedestrian access. And I realise that it's not a council, it hasn't been derived from council, that state government approved probably Bunnings and Coles. Those big major stores have come in, and so we haven't had control over how pedestrian flow occurs in that area. But basically what's happened is that the Adelaide Road was probably passable and is probably passable for maybe 60% of the population. The people who are fit and agile can get across that road probably relatively easily, but it's the people who maybe have a disability, who are older, who may have multiple reasons why their judgment to cross that particular road, they need that time to be able to cross the road. I know that the discussion has been looking at putting a centralised landing for people to stop and maybe then cross the next part of the road. But that still doesn't give the opportunity for traffic to be stopped to a halt, giving that safer access for the most vulnerable people in our community. We have people living in Hayborough and we have people living in McCracken who would like to access both shops and services on both sides of the road, and currently they cannot do that. So I haven't put a
30 seconds.
specific means of signalised crossing. I realise that the McCracken Drive and Adelaide Road intersection has been discussed before, but I'm just taking it up to the state government in DIT to look at the two issues, being the ambulance station coming in and also the fact that that traffic flow is significantly increasing every year, and that we need a pedestrian signalised crossing, not just a simplified crossing that you may see that doesn't have that safety component.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do I have a seconder for
Sorry,
Councillor Schiller? Thank you, Councillor Quinton.
I just want
Do
to
you want
flag
to
a perceived conflict of interest because I have a business on Adelaide Road.
Yep. Do I have a seconder for this? Thank you, Councillor Burns. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, just quickly, sorry, Carlos. I was initially looking at this and wondering about whether signalised pedestrian crossing was the right solution, looking at the implications on traffic flow, how many residents would cross. But I thought a bit more longer term, and whilst I agree with the administration's comments that it's probably unlikely, I agree with Councillor, because unless we actually put it up and get the discussion happening, whether it's this solution or a variation, I think that's the important thing. And I think we need to actually get they're approving so many things, and all of a sudden it's going to get super congested. And by the time they do anything, it's going to be too late. So I think we need to be having discussions now with the departments. Now, they may come back with alternate solutions, but at least we've got talking.
No, thank you. That's Councillor Karemba.
I just need to seek leave of the chamber. Just have a family emergency to deal with.
Okay. Thank you very much for letting us know. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just a clarification, I believe that when that road was upgraded, we put in the infrastructure for a signalised crossing at a certain spot on that road. So all the infrastructure is in place, all the underground wiring or the conduit's been put in place. It's just a matter of the Department of DIT to actually put up the actual visual components of it. So I'm just wondering whether that would help or not.
Through the Mayor, we put the conduit in for the DIT to put its wiring in. So there's the conduit's there, that basically because we knew hopefully that they would put the infrastructure in, but there's no real infrastructure, no electrical, nothing like that, just purely the conduit for that to be fed through.
Saves digging the road up.
Yeah, it does, absolutely.
Do we know exactly whereabouts that conduit is now located along Adelaide Road? That may help, and Councillor Schiller with her motion. I do support what she's putting up.
Sorry, through the Mayor. The pedestrian crossing that's near 44 Adelaide Road has the conduits under the ground.
Are there any further discussions? There's not really any debate. Councillor Schiller, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now have another motion on notice from Councillor Schiller. And this is in relation to a drop-off zone, the Victor Harbour Health Hub. Councillor Schiller has, and tell me if I've got this right, Angela, points 1 and 2 of your recommendation, you're not moving, but you're moving point 3 and 4. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's correct. So I'll read that for you. Would you like me to do that? So the recommendation is to encourage the developer, and this must be of the Victor Harbour Health Hub, to seek professional advice on best practice access and inclusion considerations at completion of the building, but prior to opening to the public. And 4 is invite in writing the construction company of the Victor Harbour Health Hub to present their plans to the Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee December the 7th to seek feedback from the committee. Is that, and that's all you've got, Angela? Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Burns? Angela, would you like to talk to your motion?
Yep. Obviously 1 and 2 have been taken out, but I'll give you a bit of context as to why that was placed there in the first place. About 2 months ago, Leighton Properties, I think it's called, did a walkthrough of the health hub, and I was on that walkthrough along with administration staff from planning, infrastructure. Victoria was also there, and at that meeting I put some questions to them, and it was a great opportunity to have a look at the building at the time, and I appreciate that they're doing a great job, so it's not a criticism. But I did ask the question about the drop-off zone at that meeting, and although it had been partially discussed probably, and there wasn't a certainty whether that would occur. So then when I put my questions without notice up at the last meeting, it was still being indicated that it's a possibility, but it wasn't completely nailed down. So that's why I put my motion on notice today, to make sure that the things that I've put in place did actually occur. So I got a great outcome because that's guaranteed to be in there now. So I'll take the victory of making sure that the drop-off zone was there. My next 2 points that I have in my motion regarding access and inclusion is that although the building itself is quite a long way into the process, it's never too late to advocate, and I've proved that already by advocating for the drop-off zone. The sort of access and inclusion as has been stated, we cannot make them do anything. But if we don't have that conversation with them at this late stage, where we have the opportunity to encourage them to either speak directly to our planning and infrastructure staff, going with a direct purpose to look at access and inclusion, or to get a private consultant in that may be able to give them some best practice guidance on access and inclusion to that premises before it opens up. The next component of my motion was to invite them to come to the Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and that's the same sort of concept, where if you don't ask them to come and you don't get them in the room and allow them to speak to people with disabilities and to us to speak to them as well and get some feedback from each other, we've gained nothing ventured, nothing gained. If we don't ask the question, we're not going to get an answer. So if they don't reciprocate and turn up to that meeting, there's nothing lost by asking. So that's my point.
Thank you, and well timed. Councillor Burns, have you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. I would hope with point 3 that the developer would be doing that anyway, but it doesn't hurt just to keep lobbying to ensure get the outcomes. If they're wanting the community of Victor Harbor to use their services, they need to make it accessible. So yeah, I'd be interested in what their feedback is once this is sent out to them.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Maybe a question directed Director Padhouse. With a new development like this, or any development of a 2-storey or one single storey of size, are they required under the Disability Inclusion Act to actually incorporate certain aspects into their building for access and egress and etc. like that already? And it's up to the builder under the guidelines that they put them in place in the right appropriate spots, or they need further advice?
Through the Mayor, the National Construction Code ordinarily covers off on things like disability and accessibility for buildings and what the requirements are. They are performance requirements, but they also have deemed to satisfy aspects to it. And it's the role of the building certifier to then certify that it complies with the code prior to the construction starting, and that's then monitored. But it is a minimum standard, so if they meet that standard, then they can get their certification and get on with their work. What Councillor Schiller is seeking is something beyond that. So they've met that, and she's had that conversation, and there's opportunities to improve on the minimum standard at times as well. But when it comes to what council can actually do from a statutory point of view, it's applied what they've been able to be accredited through as the minimum standard, if that's what they've decided that they want to apply.
Thank you for that. Look, I support this motion. Again, it's writing and getting communication going between developers and that. So this is not the only one. There'll be future ones coming along, no doubt, and we want to get that information out there to the developers and builders that please come and talk to us, to our community as well, so we can actually give you input into it. I can see the downside of additional costs to the developer or to the builder. It may not do it as long as they meet the minimum standards, but again, sometimes they don't see what they don't see, and having a talk to a committee of this Disability Access Inclusion Advisory Committee can actually highlight some areas which they maybe have not thought of. But yes, they're putting in this type of access, but maybe to put it around this side would be better paid off. So I think that's the value of having that meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Karembo?
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. It would be good if all developers spoke to the relevant committees to get their input. But at the end of the day, we can't let perfect be the enemy of good. We are getting a massive development coming. It's going to benefit a whole heap of the community. And I encourage them, yes, to talk to all the advisory committees, but at the end of the day, as long as they're fulfilling their requirements, it will come down to a business decision for them. So I just hope that we don't start to push people away and make it too difficult for them to open up businesses that we so greatly require in our district. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Angela, do you want to close the debate?
My intention is not to be using a sledgehammer at all with the developer. I just think that having that focus with this particular building is so important because of what it is. So there's nothing to be lost by what I'm putting as a recommendation here.
Thank you. I'll put that to the floor now. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Unanimously. And I'd just like to say, I think that's great because one of the jobs of council is to advocate on behalf of the community. And I think if we're advocating on behalf of the most vulnerable part of our community, we're doing a good job. We can't control what people hear and what people do, but we can control what we advocate for. It is 8:10, so it is time for a break. I do know that The next item is motions without notice, and then we go into confidential items. So can I just have before we break, just a heads up if anyone's got any motions without notice? No? Okay. So that just lets the gallery know that the next thing we'll be going on to is confidential items. So if you want to leave now rather than wait for 10 minutes, you're welcome to. And we'll see the rest of you back in 10 minutes after a bit of a break. Thank you. It's 20 past, let's come back. There are no motions without notice, so just clarify that. And we go to the confidential items. So the first item is related to the Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre Authority Management Agreement. And the recommendation is to go into confidence because council is satisfied that the item is commercial information of a confidential nature, which could be expected to prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied the information and would on balance be contrary to the public interest. Do I have someone to move that way? I looked at Vicky, just about tripped over there. You're right. Sorry, was that you, Stuart? So moved by Stuart, seconded by David. Either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that?
Only that when we had some discussions about this, there was an agreement earlier to extend for 12 months and then to open up and look at opportunities with an open market tender. So I'm just concerned that all of a sudden it's like 3 years.
Yeah, we can't talk about it until we've gone into confidence.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So we're going into confidence.
Sure.
All those in favour of going into confidence? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. So the second recommendation